And you're like, all right, so Health and Welfare back on April 25th, and we're going to go through a new draft 1.1 of H 238. For Budget Council. Michael, thank you.
Good morning. It's Mike Grady. I apologize for the delay.
Don't apologize.
I just did. So when I was in last, you asked for certain changes to the bill as passed the House. Do you want me to just walk through the changes?
Yes, please. And just so folks know, this is where we are. We're ready to finalize the bill. We have some fine tuning to this draft, but we're at the end of testimony and input.
Okay. Well, the first change is on page 1, line 8. I added reader assistance, indicating that the subsequent sections are for concerning PFAS and consumer products, because later on you will add language related to PFAS and personal protective equipment for firefighters. That's the first change. Second change is on page 3 in the definition of intentionally added. You had the discussion about the language that came over from the House and how the Attorney General had requested language after consultation with A&R that would have changed that language to regarding water in the product or PFAS resulting final product because of the use of water. And you changed it to the Attorney General's request. So PFAS shall not be considered intentionally added on the basis of water used in the manufacture of the product if the water used in the manufacture of the product was from a public water system permitted according to the Public Water Supply chapter 4.
Do you mind putting it up on the screen?
Oh, I thought it was.
I'm thinking about people who are out there and I don't know.
Did we decide on that language?
Pardon me?
Did we decide on that?
Yeah.
language? Yeah.
Which language?
The water we public drinking state.
Oh, right.
I'm not sure all of us decided on that language.
Well, here is that language. Should be up there on the screen.
There it is. Okay.
And then the second way to qualify if you are not a public water system, you are a water source that does not violate the maximum contaminant levels for PFAS established in the rules adopted by A&R under the Public Water Supply chapter. Should I move on from that change?
Yeah, are those different? The drinking water standards,
They are drinking waters.
they are the drinking waters. Okay.
Moving on to the next change is on page 8. In the list of those products that consumer products with PFAS in them that will be prohibited. Remember when you enacted the prohibition last year was for residential rugs and carpets, but when I restructured everything in the house, I left out the term residential before rugs and carpets, and this is just to correct my error.
Oh, can you move?
Sure.
Thanks. Okay, thank you for saving us another one-word amendment.
We're really good.
One word is better than one letter.
And we do that all the time, 4 times.
Or one number. Today's is one number. We've had one letter, one number, and now it's one word.
So moving on from there on page 11, in the previous language, there has been a proposal to prohibit the sale, offer for sale, distribution for sale of fluorinated containers or consumer products in them beginning in 2030. But you gave the Attorney General the ability by rule to authorize certain containers or consumer products in fluorinated containers if it was a currently unavoidable use. And then you define what currently unavoidable use would have been. The Attorney General asked that that be removed. They indicated that if you're concerned about the availability of products or containers with fluorinated or alternatives to the fluorinated container, that push out the date for this deadline, and they consider or they contemplate that there will be suitable alternatives in 2032. So you move that date for the prohibition on the manufacture, sale, offer for sale, distribution for sale, distribution for use in the state of fluorinated treated container or any consumer product in a fluorinated treated container from 2030 to 2032. Struck the AG's authority to adopt by rule exceptions for currently unavoidable use.
Okay.
That's the question of you, Chair Lawrence. We had talked about possibly doing a report in 27. We decided that's fast in the interim.
Not that, I don't think it was for this.
That's where I put the note of that. Okay.
So you did change, you did, and that's the next change. It's on page 14. Remember that A&R is reporting back on how states withdraw regulatory programs based on the definition of PFAS that you are using, how they are implementing their programs, obstacles, costs, recommendations of whether Vermont should adopt a similar program. As part of that report, there's going to be, it's going to address whether other states have prohibited or restricted the use of fluoride treated containers, including a summary of how fluoride treated containers are used or allowed for use in other states.
Thank you. Got that?
Moving down into section 5. This had previously said just the title of the section, just it said reports. I added PFAS and complex durable goods and food because that's what these reports address. You may remember that those reports come back in 2033 because of basically the deadlines in other states for when these products will be regulated. PFAS and these products will be regulated. He wanted an update, basically check in. And so you'll see at the bottom of page 15, the Secretary of Natural Resources shall update you on the status of the regulation of PFAS and complex durable goods and food in other states. The first report comes in 2027 as part of the report required under section 4. The second update shall be provided as testimony to the committee's honor report January 15, 2029. I will note that the report on food is coming from the Agency of Agriculture, but the update is coming from the Agency of Natural Resources. So in 27 and 29, that's because the report in section 4 is an A&R report and not an Agency of Ag report. I just wanted to note that even though the final report on PFAS and food is coming from the Agency of Agriculture, the updates on PFAS and food in 2027 and 2029 is coming from.
So is there a way to integrate those things? Does that make sense? I mean,
I
leave it.
raised it because I knew Matt was going to be here and I knew Matt could respond whether or not they'd be willing to do it.
I mean, yes, I think you can either say, or I will check in and consult with the Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets before those check-ins, I think.
Okay. We'll just leave it as it is. Okay. We don't want to confuse the world.
Moving on from there. The next changes are you added H250 related to PFAS and firefighting agents and equipment to the bill. The first addition is a definition of stationwear. In those definitions related to PFAS and firefighting equipment. Stationwear is uniform shirts and pants worn by firefighting personnel in the performance of their duties, often underneath personal protective
So we've heard since this from emergency management as well as the volunteer firefighters, that there's some concern about this language relative. I know this professional firefighters have asked for us to integrate H-250 into the bill, but then we've heard from others that this might be a little accelerated. And so committee, I think we should think twice about this one and perhaps ask for, you know, the fallback is what can we put in here? And what could we ask for some information back from the Agency of Natural Resources after consulting with emergency management, and as well as the other interested parties, professional firefighters and volunteer firefighters.
Well, there's two components of
Yes, thank you.
this list. And the two components amend the same section. First, it amends 90 to say 2494S, which is the current notice requirement, because currently you do not ban PFAS and PPE for firefighting equipment. You require the manufacturer or retailer to provide notice to the purchaser of the present so that the purchaser can make an informed decision. You added in section 9 stationware to that notice requirement. So it would not just be for the personal protective equipment, it will be for the stationware that the firefighters wear. But then you also amended that same section to go into effect in 2028 to ban PFAS in firefighting equipment and stationware. And that is July of 2028.
And this is
that is, I think, what you're hearing input on from other advocates.
yeah, very definitely. Hearing that, I think Senator Douglas, you're hearing.
I got a lot of calls from my volunteer, because I have all volunteer departments, and they can't afford to keep the new gear they can get now, and they're buying used gear, I think. So it's,
Well,
Yeah.
so that's a systemic problem that we
It
have in the
is.
state that we need to fix.
Yes.
Yeah, used gears wouldn't be covered here, but the new
But
stuff.
this would be just station gear is like the blue Headley shirts with the badge and the blue.
yeah, that was my other question.
Yeah,
I do want to note that this isn't a prohibition on use. It's a prohibition on sale or distribution for use. So whatever the current volunteer departments have, they will continue to be able to use. But at some point when they need to replace what they have, they would be replacing it with PFAS-free equipment.
Okay, so we should think about that. But maybe we're hearing from our volunteer folks that they're not understanding the language specifically. Sarah, go ahead.
Well, I'm also just wondering if either here or at a later date, we have to put in some kind, if we're gonna mandate this, you know, put in an appropriation for the volunteers to be able to afford the equipment.
they really are at a disadvantage. They can't afford, so they're running around in outfits they know are poison.
So the solution to that,
All this money.
well, I know there will be money.
But thankfully, they're a basic service, so it's a
Yeah.
decent use of money.
But this is just notice. It has
Oh,
to say on here.
the other
age
section, the
PFAS.
first, we're not in the notice section right now.
Okay.
So, Michael, just take us through, beginning with the notice section and then go to this one again, so we have clarity on what it is.
So currently, in what you enacted last year, you require a manufacturer or other person that sells firefighting equipment to any person, municipality, or state agency to provide written notice at the time of sale, citing to the subchapter if the PPE contains PFAS. Then you will see on line 11 that you are adding stationware. So if that manufacturer is selling PPE or stationware, that they will have to provide written notice of PFAS and that product. And the written notice includes a statement that the PPE or stationery contains PFAS and the reason PFAS are added to allow the purchaser, the volunteer firefighter or others to determine whether or not to make that purchase because of the need. And then the manufacturer, person selling the PPE or station wear, and the purchaser of the PPE or station wear shall retain the notice for at least 3 years from the date of transaction. 3 years is the statute of limitations for claims in Vermont, and that's why 3 years is often the retention period for records. So that is the notice. Section 10, again, in 2028, would amend what you have just amended, would strike the notice requirement, and provide that the manufacturer shall not sell, offer for sale, distribute for sale, or distribute for use in the state any PPE or stationery to which PFAS have been intentionally added. But then you had an exception to that in sub B, the prohibition under sub A shall not apply to PPE that is a respirator or respirator protection equipment. You heard some input testimony at the last review of this bill about how some respirators still have PPE, have PFAS in them, and are integral to firefighting. But then there's also testimony to put that there are alternatives that don't have PFAS in them. And ultimately, state bans like this will drive other manufacturers to move PFAS. So that's the dynamic here.
Okay, so the date 28, I mean, it seems less concerning to me as I look at it now. The concern from the volunteer firefighters, I'm not sure that they're looking at what is the language that's here in terms of manufacturers being responsible for having an alternative. The question would be the date of 28 and whether we move it out to 29 like that might be more amenable to the fall. Go ahead, Senator Douglas.
If we do it all, I think pushing the date back is a necessity. I also like to hear how expensive versus the current gear that the alternative gear would be. Because it's great that they're going to offer alternatives and push that. How much are those alternatives going to be? That's my volunteer.
And I don't know if anyone is capable of making that prediction. Certainly everything is going to be more expensive.
And because my volunteer guys work really, really hard and they care.
Yeah.
A lot of them are really selfless, and I think a lot of them care more about putting out fires and saving people than they do themselves, which is sad, but
It should have to make that.
No. There is an appropriation. Okay. All right, so committee, let's leave this in for now and hope that the communication can get out about exactly what is here. And we'll hear back perhaps from emergency management and our volunteer and professional firefighters on the languages here.
You have one additional change,
Yes.
and that is in the effective dates.
So I think unless I hear differently, can we put that date out to 29 instead of 28?
Sure. So. Yes. So you will see that effective date on page 19, line 13. That would change from July 1, 2028 to July 1, 2029.
Okay. And we'll look at that. The alternative to this is to have a report back, I think, from ANR in conjunction with the emergency management folks. So we'll have to hold that on this one, but we'll come back to the bill next week pretty early.
So,
I sound terrible. Nothing I can do about it. Can't wait to be on the floor with this one.
So-
With my voice.
are you reporting today?
A couple things, no big deal. It's just-
So the next change is in the effective date for cookware. The House had took testimony from representatives of the industry who asked to push out the effective date from 26 to 28. And, you, asked to move that date back from 28 to 27.
Okay. Oh, it's nice to meet you. Okay. All right, questions for Michael? So I know we've had a lot of discussion on this bill, but Senator Douglas, go ahead. Questions for Michael right ahead.
Yeah, remember lots of units will be mentioned, the Polaris and their, these for children that they think falls into juvenile products. ATVs and other, recreational vehicles are really big in my district. Snowmobile.
Oh, you wanted to ask about, you wanted to ask,
Yeah.
Michael Crady about, recreational vehicles and which I think is covered somewhere.
So I think what the question is whether the definition of juvenile products is broad enough to include, an ATV that's marketed to a child under 12 years old.
Where, no,
So I guess I don't know.
but remember when we were doing that, we took out automobiles and I'm looking at the. Automobile industry. Or did we do that with DECA? I'm trying to remember.
You did that with DECA.
We did it with DECA.
What anything that moved, basically, including like ships.
I got very comfortable.
Right. So what I think you would do here is in the excluding clause, but let's actually go back. The scope is it's a product designed and marketed for use by infants and children under 12 years of age. I don't know if they're marketing to under 12 years of age, possibly. And then if they are, to be clear, you would want to list them under the exclusion. And I would probably have to have a separate subdivision because the current exclusion is about electronic products and the fact that they're effectively, but it also adds adult mattresses at the end. It's a little, you would probably add
Computers and mattresses.
yeah,
Okay.
you would probably want to add, and I'd restructure this a little bit so for clarity. You'd add it there if you wanted to exclude it.
Okay. I suppose I could try this and would email to, and then we can see.
Well, I mean, we're diving into another area, so they may wanna,
So there is a definition of all terrain vehicles in Title 23. We just cross-reference that definition.
listen.
And
Certainly for want kids playing with little vehicles coated with PFAS.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's.
Know that I want a kid under 12 driving it. I was thinking the same thing. I mean, there's all, I'll see them advertised, mini cars that kids can
That's what I
drive
was
up.
thinking of.
Yeah,
Mini is like,
but you're talking about an actual ATV that would go out on a trail. And is it, because we talked about, there's things in the motor. But then the steering wheels are handled, something that the child would be coming into regular contact with. If it's, because we've excluded things like the internal workings of computers and,
complex durable goods.
yeah,
yeah,
but not if you're actually holding it
right.
onto it, touching it. If you're a certain age, you might chew on it, right? Kids are weird things.
The juvenile.
Yeah.
I don't.
They try to.
So I'll tell you what, this is an issue that Senator Douglas brought up and we'll maybe have, Michael, any thoughts at this point? And
Well, Matt just from the side says it's the same definition of children's products and the chemical supply concern to children. Chapter in Title 18,
yeah,
whether or not ATVs have been reported under that. They have not.
They have not.
yeah. I'm not interested in enabling under 12 onto ATVs. Without.
Yes, just.
For what? Hold on, when I was saying,
Feeling it's, I think somebody unsafe at this time.
Let me look for.
So you know what? Why don't I put a placeholder in,
yeah,
and you can the next draft you can after you because I'm sure you're going to receive input. You can
yeah, let's do that. Let's put a
Okay.
placeholder in and then have that conversation with folks on that.
Yeah, because this has come up with things that are used on
On
farms.
farm vehicles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And ATVs are used on farms.
They could be.
I remember that being.
Yeah, you're gonna have to,
Yeah.
you might have to take a look at a couple of definitions. Because there are some things that you think might fall under the definition of ATV and that they may not.
And
Maybe
maybe
even
even taking a
whoever
step.
is concerned in your area, where are the PFAs in that vehicle?
I think they weren't pretty specific, but I think it might be the textiles, like the seat covers and stuff like that.
Right, no, that's
Oh,
exactly,
I think
that's exactly what. Yeah,
Okay.
it's like the seat covers in automobiles and the cover on the dashboard with DECA on it.
But would it be,
That's
would
fair.
be intentionally added or over 100? Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not something that like if these vehicles are used for a very, very long time. It's not like people ripping off the cushions every year and throwing out the new ones on.
It's not that though, it's that it reaches out onto the people sitting on them and it gets on the clothes and it gets in the environment, and it gets in the water. That's the whole point. Why maybe what we should do, I still think we should go back and just ban PFAS out right the way other states have done, but we're compromising right now. It's hard to compromise. This stuff is nasty stuff. We don't want it out there causing cancer and other things.
Yes, banned it
I
outright.
mean, who's about banned it outright?
Yeah.
They,
Mhm.
really?
I mean, why do we wait?
All right.
It's just awful, awful stuff. So why don't we just hem and haw about putting it out on cushions on the front porch? Really, honestly, ridiculous. Don't get me started on this one. I think what we're doing here is a very measured approach to a different interest that we've heard from, and we're doing it, but we're not going to keep measuring ourselves into oblivion. Sorry. Sorry, I can't listen to that. Anyway.
It also prevents the agency from having an anxiety attack about.
Okay, I like that one better than mine.
Well, yeah, the budget.
I don't want to endanger anyone's mental health.
We do it on Saturday.
Okay, all right, well, let's hold it here for now and we'll come, we have this on the agenda for next week. I think pretty early and we'll come back to it and we really are ready to finish up the bill, do a vote on the bill. So,
And there are alternatives.
Oh,
yes, right. I don't think it's either. They don't even motion.
That's question to add.
All right, go ahead.
So with the filter, when people are going to be using carbon filtration or other filtered methods, there's
I'm gonna suggest that we go offline and you can talk here and then, because we've heard this one before. And we'll wait for